the increase in frequency and severity of marine disasters around Sri Lanka, from the devastating Express Pearl incident to in our own waters to Elsa 3, a wreck off coast of Kerala. The crisis demands robust, unified and scientific response. I would like to extend a warm welcome to our distinguished experts joining us on the panel today. Captain Nirmal Silva, Mr. Jagath Gunasekara, Professor Kamal Ranatunga, Mr. Nuwan Peiris, Professor Sajith Edirisinghe and Dr. Samantha Gunasekara. And of course, a warm welcome to all of you, the audience, who will be joining us in this panel. So the rules are very simple. My panel knows the rules very well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start the panel with a round of questions, and they are very focused questions in relation to the recent disasters, and they represent different areas, and I think that's where the wealth of the information that you are about to hear comes from. So without further ado, I would like to begin with Captain Nirmal Silva, former Harbour Master of Sri Lanka Ports Authority. And Captain Silva, now maritime safety heavily relies on proactive communication. When a commercial vessel is navigating the high seas versus when it enters Sri Lanka's exclusive economic zone, or the EEZ, and our territorial waters, what are the strict legal and operational obligations regarding reporting its precise location, the nature of its cargo, especially the hazardous material, and any technical incidents or risks that they foresee? Could you walk us through the mandatory protocol pathways between a ship and Ports Authority before a vessel even reaches our shores? Over to you.
Thank you, Professor Jayakody. Good afternoon, everyone. Wish you a bon appetite while we disturb or talk through these sessions. Getting back to the question, yes, as far as mandatory requirements with the Ports Authority is concerned, it is, as you mentioned, on the hazardous cargo. Any vessel, it is governed by a gazette, a dangerous cargo gazette of Ports Authority, where any vessel intending to call at any port in Sri Lanka must report what hazardous cargo they have on board at least 48 hours before the arrival. But since there are ports close by to Colombo which are less than 48 hours passage time, we have given an exception. Ships which are leaving within short distances, we do accept the declaration even less than 48 hours, because practically they cannot send the declaration until they leave the last port. So there are ports like Tuticorin, Cochin, even Nhava Sheva, which are within 48 hours. So we do understand the realities and we do accept. So in that declaration, they have to report all the different classes as per the IMDG code. The Gazette notification gives the format to report, whom, where to report, all that is there. And out of the 9 IMDG classes, there are certain classes, the explosive grades, where the agent of the ship needs to get approval from the Ministry of Defense as well. So all that is defined in this gazette, and there is a booklet by Ports Authority, Dangerous Cargo Manual, where all the agents are having a copy of it, and they know which category needs to get MOD approval. So that process all the agents are quite familiar with, and they do that notification. The additional thing is, if you find, now this is the normal situation where they report, these are what we have. In that they say these cargoes to be discharged, these are to be discharged and transshipped, and these cargoes to be only in transit while in the port, Sri Lankan port. So the importance comes when there is a special situation like a leakage or whatever out of the normal. Now all these are governed by the IMDG code, and they have taken, but even with those, we know we have experienced accidents, leakages, or shiftings, fires do happen while en route, while on passage. So those things must be immediately reported to the Ports Authority so that the Ports Authority can take necessary actions to attend to it and also to inform the other relevant authorities where we are collaborating with so that everyone is ready to attend on arrival or if it happens even out at sea. So that is basically about the hazardous cargo, but since you asked, there is no strict reporting requirement coming from the high seas to the EEZ or getting into the territorial waters, because any ship which is not even calling a port in Sri Lanka, under the law of the sea UNCLOS, they have the right for innocent passage even through our territorial waters. So they can traverse through without calling any port in Sri Lanka, they can do that. But if there is any untoward incident like pollution incident, leakage or fire, whatever which is out of the ordinary, then they are supposed to report. While they report to their owners and their flag state, they also must report to the nearest coastal state. So that is the very important thing, and the promptness of reporting goes a long way in the authorities getting together and gathering the required things to attend to that whichever emergency. Just to add, up to the EEZ under our MIPA Act, I think they will cover, just to mention, any pollution incident within the Sri Lankan EEZ will be governed by the MIPA Act and MIPA is responsible. So it is a requirement, anything happening within the Sri Lankan EEZ to be brought into the notice. There are agencies, we have things in place for attending to those things, those emergencies. So important thing, do the normal regulatory reporting, but it is mandatory for a ship's master to report, like in the MARPOL, it is any pollution or any expected pollution also must be reported to the authorities. So that is very important that they do it promptly to the authorities. I think I covered that.
Thank you. That's a very comprehensive answer. I think for most of us who are not aware about these protocols, that means a lot. Now, Mr. Jagath Gunasekara, now as the General Manager of Marine Environmental Protection Authority, I know at one point it comes to you. Right. So in that case, Mr. Gunasekara, establishing clear chains of command during an unfolding crisis is vital. When a ship is in distress and actively threatens ecological damage, at what precise operational trigger point does MIPA officially step in? Would you clarify the communication matrix? Who is obligated to inform MIPA? Whom do you subsequently mobilize? And legally, who holds the ultimate final say when making time-critical, high-stake decisions to protect our waters? Over to you, Mr. Gunasekara.
Thank you for the question. Actually, we have faced more than major ship-related incidents during the last 3-4 years. We have realized that there are some lapses in our system. Even though we have prepared National Oil Spill Contingency Plan as a lead agency, we implement this plan with the support of more than 25 agencies. That is the normal mechanism adopted by most of the developing countries, because such countries cannot maintain one agency with all the equipment and all the facilities. Therefore, in the event of major incident, we have to get together and use nationally available equipment and human resources. When such an incident happened, excess fuel and the empty new diamond, we respond that incident, and we realized that there are several lapses in our system. Based on the lesson learned from this incident, we have updated our National Oil Spill Contingency Plan as a National HNS and Oil Spill Contingency Plan. again we have realized that there are several entities in Sri Lanka with different kind of responsibilities. Then when there is an incident, shipping related incident, there is one part called casualty management. Casualty management involves when there is fire or any incident in that ship, then there is casualty management plan in Sri Lanka. This casualty management plan need to be implemented. If there is any necessity to rescue people, there is rescue plan adopted by MRCC. Like that, again, when there is incident and there is possibility to enter pollutant into the marine environment, we have to implement National Oil Spill Contingency Plan. In this regard, after this incident, we realized that there is no proper communication channel, there is no mechanism to inform MIPA. This incident, there is no direct communication with any of the agencies. We realized that that is as a gap. We established National Operation Room. Now we have 24/7 National Operation Room. We have deployed our officers there. Any agency or ships can now inform MIPA this if there is any incident. Again, under the National Oil and Chemical Spill Contingency Plan, we have adopted Incident Command System. That is developed system by USA. There is mechanism how we should communicate. There is incident commander and organizational chart. There is clear-cut communication mechanism. This system we adopted in our system. Therefore, there is no possibility to have a communication gap. Again, in order to implement National Oil and Chemical Spill Contingency Plan, there is first responders. First responders, we have to deploy first responders. Our main first responders is Sri Lanka Coast Guard. In the event of major incident, we have to appoint incident commander. Then incident commander should work with incident management team. It should prepare incident action plan. Then they have to communicate with each agencies and they have to implement this incident management plan. That system we have established. Earlier there was a lot of communication gap. Coordination and collaboration was an issue. Under the new National Oil and Chemical Spill Contingency Plan, we have established this new system. Recently, this contingency plan submitted to the cabinet. Cabinet approved that plan. Now it is legal document. With the other stakeholder agencies, we can implement this new plan. There will not be any communication gap if we correctly adopted procedure laid down in the National Oil and Chemical Spill Contingency Plan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's, I know with every disaster, it gives us an opportunity to learn, to adapt, and to hear that MIPA has now gone to the next level to avoid any miscommunication is a very good news. Now, Prof. Ranatunga, I think an effective environmental compensation claim hinges entirely on scientific proof, and that's where the scientists come in. A robust damage assessment report requires meticulous data collection and solid baseline matrices to prove how far an ecosystem has deviated from its normal stage. Could you elaborate on what a comprehensive damage assessment report must evaluate? And why is it absolutely legally non-negotiable that these assessments are structured as long-term, research-backed scientific procedures rather than rushed, short-term observations? As a scientist, I think you are the best person to answer this question.
Thanks, Professor Sevvandi. I think it's not that we don't have the science or that we don't have the scientists. We have both. But the problem is we don't have the structure or the mechanism to get that data. Now, when we come to the data, when you go to the court or the negotiation table, so they're looking at the credibility of the data that you have provided. And that's where whenever you provide the data, we need to clearly understand something called there is a natural variability. Any data, there is a natural variability. And the other things, there is a trend. So we have to identify the natural variability, maybe seasonal variation. And the other thing is the trend. What is the trend? And the most important in this kind of a situation, so how that the data change from that natural variability, some sort of abrupt change in the data will only show that there is something going on wrong. So that is the most important thing. Now we look at something like, we have to look at the long-term data on the physical-chemical parameters like a pH, diesel oxygen, or the hydrocarbon levels in case maybe it's the oil damage. But all these need long-term data and based on a standard best practices, so they internationally recognized data. And the other thing is the biological data, like how much the ecological impact is. We are going to the, but we should have the prior data before the incidents. But without that prior data, anything that you are going to claim is not going to work, because we should know how it was before. I remember that even with the Express Pearl beta, there were a lot of media talking about how much that impact on the coral reefs, right? But we know that the other coral reefs also dying. So how we just claim this one alone, right? And we're talking about how many turtles died, right? But the turtles die naturally, and there are a lot of turtles dying because of the fishing. They're caught in the fishing nets. There are hundreds of turtles die because of the. So unless you have a direct clue that they are died because of burn or something due to the fire, otherwise it's so difficult. Like even if you're looking at the social data, like the fisheries fish catch, that also naturally change, and even in the other areas the fish catch declines, and it's how we can directly say that this is just because the fishing. Other most important is, I think, the ecosystem services, how much that's going to impact. That is one of the most vague thing, and we can put billions and billions on that, but how we can prove that one, because that's where you need long-term data that collected on a very scientific methods, and without these things, I'll give one example. Very recently, one of the very high scientific forum, one of expert talk about like one of the power plants discharges relating to the miscarriages of in the people living in that area. How we can relate these PowerPoint exit, and because the ocean it already has mercuries, and of course coal has mercury, but how do you say that it's just the coal came from the mercury or not? So this is the problem, That's where we need the long-term data.
Thank you, Professor Ranatunga. That really tells us these things are not easy. We live in a world where science works on probability, whereas when it comes to Mr. Nuwan Peiris, our next panelist, an attorney at law and a chartered shipbroker, I think the world is different. For you, the answers are yes or no when it comes to legal terms. So therefore, Mr. Peiris, maritime disasters inevitably transform from the ocean to the courtroom. When an incident occurs, the collection of physical and digital evidence must follow flawless chain of custody protocols to avoid being thrown out of the Supreme Court or international arbitration tribunals. What are the strict legal standards a country must adhere to during evidence gathering? And looking back at our recent legal battles, what are the critical mistakes we made that must never be repeated? Over to you, Mr. Peiris.
Thank you, Professor, for your question. It's a very sticky question during the lunchtime. Yeah, basically, collecting productions and keeping them and making it admissible and relevant is a very difficult problem for any country. So don't take it that it is our problem, because I know that even in Breakwater Horizon that took place in USA, some of the claims were thrown off at the appeal stage. So, because sometimes they collect, as you know, as a scientist, you know that when you collect data, you see, sometimes you collect, mountains and mountains of data. So, given the sheer quantity of data, management of that evidence, and the chain of custody to the level of admissibility and relevancy is a tough task. So, therefore, what is needed first is, as we saw from even one of the massive disasters that took place some time ago, I think 2010, Breakwater Horizon, it's a huge one, is the legal cooperation. Now even some of the legal scholars in USA is highlighting the importance of it. Because, if you can have a very good legal team assisting at the stage of incident and accident response. Now even I General Manager was talking about the incident and accident response, and Professor next to me was talking about the natural variability of the data, of the evidence collected. So, given all that, sometimes the lawyers may not understand that. And as a result, what you need is a simple thing, that is to have a good legal team from the very outset. Now, it looks very simple, but this is what doesn't happen. Because remember, when the process is initiated in a court of law, it goes to appellate courts also. Yeah. So you're talking about some of the matters as far as Breakwater Horizon is concerned, is still pending. So, these are hard lawyers. They know how to cross-examine, they know how to drill, they bring their other experts to, drill in the challenge your evidence. That's why maybe Professor was talking about natural variability. So, given that legal cooperation, although it is simple, I may be stating the obvious, but it is something that you ought to have. That is point number one. And secondly, we need to take into account the global challenges in legal reform. That is now even in the Express Pearl judgment, they have said that, they have once again reiterated the principle of precautionary principle. So, so as a result, now I'm not going to discuss what is precautionary principle, but the legal aspect of it is that sometimes there are instances where you can shift the burden of proof. So, should we need to formulate laws in a way that when we collect evidence, when we take the sample, and when we file it before the magistrate, it is a representative of the whole entire thing, the entire population, and it can't be challenged in another forum, in another legal forum later on. So those are areas that are opening up in the field of law with regard to evidence collection and to ease, as you said, the chain of custody. So, and I'm happy to say that even Dr. Gunasekara is also looking into these legal reforms. He's throughout the clock. I think he's consulting us, and even you all, even General Manager, we had several discussions of exploring the areas of law reform. So that's a positive thing. So we are moving in the right direction. So therefore, the next is that, to incorporate new concepts like precautionary principle even at procedural level. I hope you don't get it confused, because we already have the substantive aspect of precautionary principle. Precautionary principle at procedural level, so that the burden of proof shifts to the other side at a particular stage when you make a prima facie case. Yeah. All these things have been discussed, and there are enough legal papers on that, maybe to have another legal discussion on that and see how it can be done. Because I understand your frustration, because you're spending millions and millions and millions of rupees just to have these productions in place, and even while the court processes are going on, international arbitrations are going on, you have to maintain them in cool rooms and so on and so forth, and that itself may be subject to subject to decay and all that. So given all that, right, so we can explore legal possibility, and I think our Supreme Court has also opened up that area very well. And finally, I would like to say that things are moving in the positive direction. You see, now the fact that all these personnel are getting together itself is a positive thing. Now, about 10 years ago, we didn't have this discussion. Right? Now it is opening up. So the fact that you are asking that question about the keeping the production in place, that itself is a positive thing. So let's get together. It's about 2-3 days workshop, and we'll draft the rules, compare it with other countries, bring their expertise, and draft a regulation or an amendment so that we can look into that, take that into consideration. It may not be perfect, but we can be the template for the other countries to follow, which is an unnatural development. Remember, we have always taken leadership in these areas. Remember, we brought the Law of the Sea Convention, some of the provisions, right? I know there's a Frenchman here, they also contributed, but we also contributed to the Law of the Sea and even Maritime Zones Law. So our legal scholars have done a brilliant job in most of these areas. Notable, I mean top-class job. So I think we are ready for reform.
That's really nice to hear. And it's also, I know some of the words may not be very digestible to you while you are having lunch, but this is how the legal domain works, and I think it's so important. I know most of you are scientists, but to understand, and thank you, Mr. Peiris, for that very comprehensive answer.
Thanks.
Now, Professor Sajith Edirisinghe, now you represent a very unique perspective in this forum today. A professor in anatomy of Faculty of Medical Sciences, University of Sri Jayawardhanapura. Now, Professor Edirisinghe, historical wrecks spilled gold and oil. So, but now if we talk today, it's plastic and many noxious chemicals. So for me, for us today, perhaps today's question for you is, from a medical perspective, why are chemical and nodal spills a severe threat to human health? Furthermore, what has modern medical science recently revealed about systematic changes to microplastic and nanoplastic entering into food chain and the human body? Over to you. I think everyone would love to know what are the recent medical advances.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Jayakody. So, I think most of you all are familiar with the term called microplastics. So, for us, there are 3 methods of entering microplastics into human body. So all of us know through our food chain, this tiny microplastic, that is whatever the plastic material less than 5 millimeters in size, that will be broken down to micro and nano scale. Those are microscopic plastic noodles. So all of us are aware that this plastic material will enter to the food chain and we consume that from our food and the drinking water, that these tiny plastic particles will enter to our human body. But remember, that is not the main route of entry of microplastics into human body. The main route of entry of microplastics into the human body is through inhalation, because we eat only 3 times a day, but we breathe 24/7. So the breathing or inhalation is the main route of entry. So the latest scientific data has revealed that these microplastics will cross our intestine and enter to our human body. So we use chemicals to produce plastics, as well as these tiny plastic particles are very fond of absorbing, that is adhering whatever the chemicals that are in the marine environment and the heavy metals onto the surface of the microplastics. So once it is entered to our human body, what will happen is that will simply diffuse these absorb whatever the chemicals into the surrounding structures. These chemicals are capable of changing our genetic material. So there are evidences that these tiny plastic materials can cause cancerous diseases. As well as in 2025, there was a Nature publication. These plastic material which were found on the patients who are having Alzheimer's disease, that is, you will lose your memory, are nearly 50 times greater than whatever the plastic material that is found on the normal human being's brain. We are currently we are conducting a research. We alarmingly find there are tiny microfibers especially the nylon fibers that are coming out of our nylon clothes and the fishing nets. We find those things, we have found those things in the human brain. Imagine. So these microplastic particles will lead for cancerous as well as non-cancerous disease. The other most alarming thing is the scientists have produced enough and more data. These microplastic particles are crossing the human placenta, right? So the important thing is the people or the children who have never heard a word called plastic are now born with plastics. So if you go to the cancer hospital, the Apeksha Hospital Maharagam, and if you take the data of the cancer incident data, the pediatric cancers are now rising. There are other causes as well. This is another leading factor that will lead for the development of cancer. So from our actions, we are killing our future generations. So it will cross the placenta as well as it will stick in the terminal organs, especially the brain. So that will reduce the memory capacity of the working population. That will affect the economy of that particular country as well. So there are other many diseases because this plastic material, whatever the chemicals, can mimic certain hormones in our body. So the natural hormone balance in our body will reduce. At the same time, that will lead for infertility and subfertility. So that will affect the country in a major scale. So it is our duty to protect the environment.
Thank you. I am very thankful to you, Prof. Edirisinghe, because I think this is a message that should go to everyone in our communities. Everyone, from policymakers to everyone, should know what you've been deliberating today. Thanks a lot. So now I'm moving to Dr. Samantha Gunasekara, Chairman, Marine Environmental Protection Authority. Dr. Gunasekara, whether it is chemical pollution or millions of plastic needles blanketing our beaches, it is our vulnerable coastal communities and fishermen who bear the immediate brunt of this damage. What institutional mechanisms are currently active to ensure these communities are safeguarded, properly compensated for lost livelihoods, and educated on disaster risks? Are these measures rigorous enough, or are we missing a cohesive national safety net? Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Sevvandi. As Mr. Nirmal mentioned, that Marine Pollution Prevention Authority is the main authority in the country to prevent, mitigate and control the pollution, any type of pollution in the oceans of Sri Lanka. It means oil, chemical and other noxious substances as well. In this case, we are responsible to mitigate and the control. So regarding the humans also, the impacts are there. So, and also we can not only the management of the mitigation and controlling that incident, and also we can coordinate with other institutions as well in compensation process. So MIPA is the main institution to make the compensation and to coordinate in that process. But not only the MIPA, there are other institutions. For an example, the Disaster Management Center is the key agency to coordinate other agencies in case of collective efforts to mitigate and also to attend other agencies and also participate the livelihood of the other people also. And the other institution is the Fisheries, Department of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. The ministry has the look after the fisheries community and also they are attending to their livelihood and also any compensation, even the express pearl disaster and then That case also the fisheries attended to get the compensation for the fisheries community in the case of fishing ban and all. And also the other institution is the NARA, having the responsibility to take the data, the scientific aspect of the data, collecting those data in the marine environment, because how it affects the fishing and the fishery. The other institution is the local authority. In case of provincial areas, the divisional secretaries, district secretaries and other provincial agencies, they have to compensate the affected parties, especially fishing community and all these people. So there are the descriptive mechanism, but anyway, this is the summary of that.
Thank you. Thank you. So far, my panel has been behaving very good because I gave them some time restrictions and they've been following it. And as I start the second round of questions, what I'm expecting from you is a very brief 1-minute answer, and I think that will be the essence of take-home message from you to the audience today. And so I would move to Captain Nirmal. Captain Nirmal, what structural shifts must the post authority implement to ensure we can intercept and act on crisis correctly and without delay in future?
Thank you, Professor Sevvandi. I think we have been already into it partly. In casualty management and taking action in pollution incidents, it has to be a collaborative effort. It is Ports Authority has a limited responsibility and effort. We are collectively, I would say, prior to New Diamond or Express Pearl, also we were together. But since then, we have come together very much more. That brought us all the respective agencies together in a stronger way. And we, as a nation, still do not have all the things to combat such a thing even in future. That is a fact because of our economic things. But our structural things have been put in place to act, because even in our NOSCOP for the different levels of spills, we on the third level we have to get regional assistance. So that will be the way even in a casualty we have to get regional assistance. I don't think any country in the world is having the capacity alone to combat such levels. Maybe I'm going a bit longer. So the thing is, our structural performance, the reorganizing of the structures have been done. It is not, Ports Authority is part of that structure. So we collaboratively, I think the theme of this discussion also, the collaboration, that is very important, and we understand each other and we know each one's capabilities and we act accordingly. So that is the point where we have come from where we were, and we have much longer to go as far as having assets to combat such things. I hope...
yes. I think it's very interesting to hear the words that we have to act collaboratively and understanding each other. Mr. Gunasekara, you've been in the thick and thin of many disasters. You've seen them. So what are the most glaring loopholes in Sri Lanka's current national disaster preparedness, and what are your immediate actionable suggestions to plug these gaps before the next maritime incident occurs?
During the last discussion, we mentioned about we have now National Oil and Chemical Spill Contingency Plan. Plan itself not sufficient to face the disaster. We have to have sufficient amount of equipment, especially when the incident happens, offshore response mechanism should be there. At the moment, most of the agencies, they don't have offshore oil or chemical spill comeback capability. And we don't have enough equipment, enough platform, and enough human resources. All these things depend on the funding. Major repercussions in this area is sustainable funding mechanism. Funding is required to improve our capacity. Without sustainable funding mechanism, we cannot do anything. Therefore, actually, we have studied other countries' disaster management system. Then we realized that there are mechanisms without extra burden to government treasury. We can generate sufficient amount of fund using internationally accepted principle like polluter pay principle, even potential polluter pay principle. And we are in the process of amending our act. We are going to incorporate necessary provisions into our act to incorporate these principles into act and have a sufficient amount of funding mechanism to tackle such an incident. Using these principles, we are going to, like other countries, Australia or New Zealand, Finland, we are going to have a small amount of levy based on the risk factor which created by vessel. Using such a mechanism, we can establish sustainable funding mechanism. We are in the process of amending our act, incorporating legal provisions, then we can implement such a system in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gunasekara. Now, let me move to Professor Ranatunga. Professor Ranatunga, there is always this statement that it's during a crisis that we start monitoring, but we don't have long-term monitoring. To correct our course, what are the 2 or 3 critical long-term environmental parameters that we must start monitoring immediately? Professor Ranatunga?
Okay, thanks. Actually, that's a difficult question, but it depends on what kind of a spill, whether it's oil spill or whether it's the chemicals. But in reality, we have some baseline data. The data usually either project-driven, funding-driven, or mostly patchy. So that is where we need some targeted, focused data collection in particular. So if we look at this kind of a damage assessment, I would rather consider like at least we have to have the sediment quality, because measuring temperature and all this we can even get from the satellite, even Logan data, but although we can use the sensors. But sediment quality is something stable where we can look at alone in the port environment and shipping lines. That is one thing to look at. The second one is the habitat health assessment. Like it's maybe a couple of parameters, but species diversity, and if you have a reef or some sensitive ecosystem, if you know the health of that ecosystem, will be a really good measure that what is going to happen. The third and most important, I think, the studying the plankton and larvae, because they are the one who's more sensitive to the abrupt changes. So if you have data on the species distribution or community dynamics of changes, so that is will be a really good measure we can look at. But the thing is, as Mr. Nuwan, our lawyer said, the most important thing, the data will to be something comparable, and more importantly, is understandable to even the lawyers. That's more the important thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Ranatunga. I think with that answer, I would like to move to Mr. Peiris. International maritime law offers various frameworks for liability and compensation.
Yes.
What are your key recommendations regarding which international conventions or maritime obligations Sri Lanka needs to adopt next to ensure our citizens and coastlines receive maximum financial and legal protection? I think I do understand that you all are at the moment deliberating what are the key international conventions and maritime obligations that are necessary to ensure Sri Lanka protects its shores, ecosystems, and also people. Over to you.
Yes, Professor. Thank you very much. A timely question. Yes, I mean, Express Pearl judgment even gave a direction to the state to establish a committee to decide on what are the conventions that we ought to ratify. And I think there is a committee in progress. So they are considering them. So you asked about specifically about the liability conventions. So that is basically CLC convention, bunker and HNS. So when you become part of such a scheme, then we also have to make a payment. I think we should ratify them, and we need to incorporate them into our laws. And they have a multi-tiered liability scheme. Unfortunately, we were not all that successful with regard to the New Diamond incident, getting what we should get. But moving ahead, proper law reform would certainly, as Mr. Jagath Gunasekara said, proper law reform in the right direction would certainly help us, and that is what we should take home. Yes, we need to ratify them, and we need to bring quickly the enabling legislation to implement them, and also basically a good, as I said, all these experts said, that a coordinating team, right, to basically get the evidence, formulate the legal claim and all that, so that we can make our claim in an appropriate way to the appropriate forum in a suitable, as quickly as possible without any delays, so that we get the relevant compensation, because these are mutual insurance schemes that are put in place. Banca Convention, HNS Convention and CLC Convention. So that, the case in point is the New Diamond tanker and what happened and how why couldn't we get the confirmation, compensation that is due. Probably not due to MIPA's fault, that's due to baby lapses in the legal side. So make sure that we should not, that doesn't happen once again.
Thank
you
you
very much.
Thank you. With that, I want to move to Prof. Edirisinghe. You talked a lot about microplastic and nanoplastic, and given that microplastic now being detected in almost every environment, absolute avoidance is nearly impossible, that we all know. So what immediate biomedical or public health innovations do we need to pioneer in Sri Lanka to ensure our population's exposure levels are relatively monitored and managed? I know going from biomedical science to biomedical innovation, but what's the pathway?
Yeah. Now, the most important thing is the general public education. So, because you can give a 90% of the solution by educating from the school children to the younger adults. Because I think it's a little bit difficult for change the mind of the older adults, because if you put the concept for the small kids at the school level, that will be a long-term investment for Sri Lanka to reduce this plastic mismanagement. As our keynote speaker sir said in the morning, we are the world 5th level in the plastic mismanagement. Then if you educate the general public about the health effects and the problems that will face in future if you don't properly discard this plastic, because plastic is everywhere in the industry, because you can't go for zero plastic at the moment because it is a big $1 million industry. But the thing is, we have to remember, you use the plastic and dispose it in a proper manner, not to just to throw it into the environment. The other thing is, we have to get the technology and the biomedical engineering teams involved, especially about the filters, to filter, because there are microplastic filters in the commercial market, but those are very expensive. And we have to go for simple methods like air bubbling, where we can trap and float these microplastics to the surface and then take them out. So we have to think about new innovations, and more than that, because that is a simple community, that is where 5 or 10% of the population, but 90% of the population are not in the scientific environment. So the best method is, we have to simply deliver the health effects of these microplastics, especially where it crosses the placentas and getting the future generations into the disease status. So we have to educate the general public, that is, and we have to innovatively do that thing, like television ads or the street dramas or whatever. Those are very innovative things where we can send the message. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, last but not the least, Mr. Gunasekara. MIPA is a regulatory and enforcement authority. It cannot carry the burden of ocean data collection and continuous ecosystem monitoring entirely by its own. Since these responsibilities must be shared across state bodies, What are the most urgent infrastructure and technological investments that other state authorities and MIPA itself must secure right now to guarantee a resilient marine monitoring framework in Sri Lanka? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. The most essential and the most urgent requirement is the manpower. That's the most essential thing. And also the technology. So actually, we have to go for the future modern technology and also what we are in short of this case, especially case of GIS, AI, and portals, digital portals. Those things are very important in case of data collection. And the collaboration. Collaborative work is very, very important with other agencies. We have this CCD, Wildlife, NARA, and all these institutions. Data also, meantime, have to develop in case of that. Especially the pollution aspect, biodiversity aspect, coastal ecosystems, health hazards, and all the things, and the quality, water quality. So some of those are ongoing, especially for the water quality. These things, the SACEP and combined projects are going on, but some more things to be developed, especially the data collection with the especially real-time data is very, very important, as well as because now most of the data what we are using and the equipment are, some of them are not updated. That's why we have to have the real-time data. So for that we have to have the ocean observation infrastructure and also integrate national maritime data platform. If we are having such thing, maritime data platform is very, very essential, at least to establish now. Go on, we can go for the future on that. And also the human capital, I have mentioned, and dedicated national more marine monitoring network itself. So that is also lacking here. So in future, at least we have to establish those things. Thank you.
Thank you. And I take this opportunity to thank all the panelists. Now, probably you understood the width and the breadth of the panelists. So from the wisdom of the Ports Authority, going into the legal side, the real managers, the legal side and the medical side. Now you understand marine disasters bring everyone together. The word that we heard all the time was cooperation, the science, and also the need for continuous monitoring, and as a nation ensuring that we sort of seal the loopholes, that is both administratively in the managerial section, but also in terms of legal side, in order to face marine disasters. Not that we are expecting any more marine disasters, but the event of a marine disaster, how we have to prepare. So I thank all the panelists for all the insightful deliberations you made, and I also thank all the listeners today. I know we were disturbing you while you were having your dinner, but while you were having your lunch, but you understand the importance of these kind of deliberations, because as an island nation, it's so important that we work together and collaboratively in order to make sure that we face marine disasters which are inevitable, but we face it correctly and have the least disturbance to livelihoods and also to our marine ecosystems. Thank you everyone, and thank you panelists for your deliberations.
I would now like to invite Mr. Anas Delbris, the representative to the Embassy of France, to hand over tokens of appreciation to the panelists and the moderator. Professor Sevvandi Jayakody. Panelist Professor Kamal Ranatunga. Panelist Captain Nirmal Silva. Panelist Dr. Samantha Gunasekara. Panelist Mr. Jagath Gunasekara. Panelist Professor Sajith Edirisinghe. And panelist Mr. Nuwan Peiris.